How's it going, friends? Today I'm back with another tier list after I did one for Pixar. I got a lot of good feedback, people enjoyed it, so I'm back doing it for the MCU. And what better time to do this than with the conclusion of Phase 4, having just seen Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I won't be ranking the TV shows in this one because I haven't seen them. I'm sorry. I do really like the MCU. I've seen all the films, but there's other stuff I'd rather be watching than dedicating my time to all of these shows. So this is just a ranking of the movies because I'm a guy who likes films. This is not a TV channel, as great as TV can be sometimes. So without further ado, let's get into it. Oh, and again, as I said last time, this list is ranked relative to the MCU. So just because something's like a C tier movie, I'm not saying it's a C tier movie overall. I'm just saying it's C tier in relation to everything else in the MCU. So yeah, don't get mad at me. So we're ranking these in chronological order. So starting with the first Iron Man. And look, it's the original and it's one of the best. This movie had to work for the MCU to work and really get off the ground. And I've gone back to it a number of times. It's a fantastic origin story for one of the MCU's best and most iconic characters. It's one of the best movies in the series, and that is going to go in A tier for me. I am a big fan of Iron Man. Now, Incredible Hulk, this is one I'm pretty ambivalent towards. I've seen it a couple times. It's one I never really remember much from. The recasting also has sort of made this movie feel a little bit irrelevant, as important it is as an origin story. It's okay, but, it's not nowhere near. It's on the lower end for me. I'm going to put it in D tier. It's not a terrible movie, but it's not great. It's definitely one of my least favorites. Iron Man 2 is a tough one because it's probably the one that has been the longest gap since rewatching it. Like, I haven't seen it since it was in theaters, so I've never really had any sort of passion towards it, but I know there's a contingent of people who really like it, and Sam Rockwell is, like, memorable in it. I remember him, I remember the other villain. Like, it's between C and D for me because I could care less about this movie, but I also haven't rewatched it in quite some time, so I can't really make an assessment of how I feel about it now because a lot of these movies, my opinions of them really have changed over the years. So I'm going to throw Iron Man 2 in the default category of C for now, pending a rewatch. Thor, the original Thor, I've seen a few times, and I think it's just fine. It's a nice introduction to the character and a few of his companions, has a few great moments, but overall, I think it's a pretty boring film. The villain is completely average, like Destroyer or whatever he's called. And sadly, I think it's probably still the second best film in the Thor series. But it's okay. It's another C for me, the first Thor film. Captain America, the First Avenger. Now, I really like this one. I think it's kind of underrated almost. I don't know. Captain America's always been one of my favorite characters in the MCU, and I think it's a great origin story. It captures that World War II setting really well. It captures like the fever of patriotism at the time and how it affected him and his desire to fight, but he's sort of the good side of patriotism, I guess you'd say, and his bravery and courage and love for his fellow man sort of shines through, and it's a wonderful introduction to the character. And Bucky, I find it really emotionally compelling, and I think it's an underrated one. I'm gonna put The First Avenger in B tier. It's a good movie. The Avengers. Okay, controversial take. I'm kind of ambivalent toward this movie. It's very good, and it was a huge touchstone in that it was the first time that we got to see these characters fighting together on screen, and I didn't get into the MCU until a little later, so I didn't have this sensation of seeing it that first time in a theater and being blown away. It's still a very, very good film, but it's really in the middle tier of the MCU for me, and I think they've gone bigger and better since that, despite how great it is. It's gonna be a B for me, The Avengers. Now we come to Iron Man 3. Now, I like this movie up until the twist. I know some have come around on it, but I rewatch this every now and then, and it gets to that twist, and it still just bugs me. Not so much because, they've done comedic shifts before, it's fine, but I don't know. I just think they set up such an intimidating villain, pulled the rug out from under us, and then the movie just kind of loses steam after that. But that being said, it's Shane Black. He knows how to make a fun movie. It's probably one of the funniest MCU movies, and I think he gets a lot out of Iron Man's character. It's not a bad movie at all. It's going in the C tier for me, Iron Man 3. There's probably going to be a lot in these B and C tiers. So I'll probably rank them all individually in the tiers at the end. Okay, now we come to Thor: The Dark World, the very much maligned Thor: The Dark World. It was a disappointment after the first Thor, which itself is kind of mediocre, but yeah, I remember going to see this wearing red Thor capes with all my friends. And it's the case with a lot of MCU movies. I came out the first time enjoying it a lot, and then you go back to it and it's like, this isn't really that good. The villain is completely useless. I cannot even remember his name. It's just a real nothing movie, and it's one that no one really remembers from the MCU, and it's one of my least favorites. So that's going in the D tier. I honestly don't think anything is going in the E tier here. I don't think there are any MCU movies that are that bad. There are a lot of average, mediocre ones, but yeah, I think D's about as low as it gets. Captain America: The Winter Soldier. It's one of the best. I know it's their spy thriller, and while yes, it's not quite a spy thriller, it's the MCU's impression of a spy thriller. It's an exhilarating movie. Again, it takes probably my favorite Avenger and builds upon him, and builds upon the central relationship between him and Bucky, which was one of the things that compelled me the most about the first Avenger. And it's beautifully shot. It was the introduction of the Russo bros to the MCU. Say what I will about their current filmmaking, they made some of the best films in the MCU, and they really know how to wrangle a big production. And The Winter Soldier is, yeah, I love it. It's one of the best. It's, again, like Iron Man, between that S and A tier, and it's going to be an A tier for now. I don't think it's quite on the tippy top level, but it's one of my favorites. Guardians of the Galaxy. I saw this like at least 4 or 5 times in theaters. It was sort of the first movie in the MCU that felt genuinely really special to me. It felt like, I think I said this at the time, it felt like my Star Wars. Like my big sci-fi property about a ragtag group of misfits who, like, I collected all the figures of them. I listened to the soundtrack over and over. I'm a big fan of James Gunn as a filmmaker. I think he's one of the best comic book filmmakers out there, and I still love Guardians of the Galaxy every time I go back to it. They are some of my favorite characters in the MCU, and it's just a wonderful film about friendship and found family, and it's gorgeous to look at, and I love everything about it, and it's an S. It is absolutely an S. I think it is among the very best the MCU has to offer. Now, Avengers: Age of Ultron. This is another one where I kind of loved at the time when it came out. I think I saw it like 3 times in theaters, and I've gone back to it a few more times since, and it's just one that's like diminishing returns on every rewatch. It's still, I don't think it's a bad film the way some people do. I think Ultron is a good character. James Spader does a great job voicing him, but it also is a bit messy, a bit too long. Great that it introduced Scarlet Witch. That was very cool. I think I like it more than some people do, but it's still not going above that C tier for me, Age of Ultron. It's one where the cracks sort of show in the MCU, and I feel like a lot of their films suffer from a lack of rewatchability. Not all of them, but there are a number of them that you sort of get caught up in the hype when they come out, and then you come back to it and it's like, it's fine. Now we come to Ant-Man. Now, Ant-Man is a film I really like, and it's a hard one for me to place because I don't think it's their most exceptional film, but again, it's a great origin story. Visually, it has a lot of great visual gags and action sequences. In terms of the story, it's pretty been there, done that, the villain being a reverse version of the hero, etc. I think it definitely hurt from losing Edgar Wright, but I think Peyton Reed's done a really good job with these movies, and I don't know if I can quite put Ant-Man up in the B tier as much as I like it. I'm going to put it in C, but it's probably my favorite film that I've got there in C, like by quite a wide margin. In fact, I may have to move down to E. And you know what? We're rejigging this. These two are going down to E, and I am going to move Thor and Iron Man 2 down to D. and keep free that C tier up a little bit, because I have a feeling there are going to be a lot of films ending up in that spot, and I like a bit of symmetry in my tier lists. Now we come to Captain America Civil War, which is a film I like a lot. I saw it a number of times when it came out. My good friend Jaron is a huge lover of this film. It might even be his favorite. So, many a day spent talking about it with him. And I love it. I don't think it's one of their best. Again, I do have issues that some people have with the shitty wet cement color grading, but it was probably the biggest team up battle film that we'd seen from them to that point. It was political without getting too bogged down in it. And of course, it centered on my favorite guy, Captain America, duking it out. And, Captain America was right. Let's just get that across here. But point is, Civil War is great. It's one of the best. It is going in the B tier. It's definitely not quite as good as The Winter Soldier, but it was a very worthy follow-up, and it feels almost like an honorary Avengers film rather than just a Captain America film. Doctor Strange is sort of in that Ant-Man sort of tier, where it's one I really like. It's visually dazzling, but beyond that, I don't love it. I don't have any special attachment to it. But what I'll say for Doctor Strange is I love the visual effects. Love the score from Michael Giacchino. The villain definitely left a bit to be desired. These big blockbusters tend to waste Mads Mikkelsen's talent on these really middling characters. But yeah, Doctor Strange, it's a good movie. It's one of their best visual efforts, and one of the only movies that I saw in 3D and thought, that was actually worth seeing in 3D, so I will give it that. But it is going to go in that C tier because I do think it is mid-range MCU fare. Now we come to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, I think I like this even more than when it came out, and I just think that is just the heart that James Gunn brings to his films. It definitely didn't capture that same lightning in a bottle that the first one did, but it's still a very entertaining film. It builds on the characters, and it has an incredibly emotional conclusion that ties in with Peter Quill's story arc. Like, come on, Mary Poppins, y'all, like Yondu, what a king, what a legend. I really love this movie, and it is well and truly in the B tier for me. Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man entered the MCU. He made his debut in Civil War, but this was his movie. And I love Spider-Man Homecoming. It's one of my favorites. It is a wonderful introduction to this Peter Parker. They eschewed a lot of the origin story, so we kind of got to get straight into it. And it's just a great teen movie as well. It gets high school Peter Parker right, it gets science genius Peter Parker right, and it gets Spider-Man right, this developing Spider-Man. And this has really been, I think, one of the most consistently good sagas in the MCU, these Spider-Man films, and I love Homecoming. Vulture is a wonderful villain. That scene where he realizes Peter is Spider-Man, chef's kiss, that is cinema. The supporting cast are great, Zendaya's great, Ned's great. I really love this movie, and it's one that I've gone back to a number of times, and it is going to go in the A tier. Thor Ragnarok, the one truly great Thor film, and I love this. Taika Waititi really struck gold with this one. Brings his sense of humor that was really, I guess we were on a high on Taika Waititi around the time this came out. He was a filmmaker I was really loving coming up, and this just hit at the perfect time. Korg's a wonderful character creation. It's so colorful, it's so weird, it's so funny, it's so full of heart. It is the best representation that we have seen of Thor in the MCU. It reinvented the character without feeling fake or forced or out of the blue. It's a great film, and it's an S. I love it. It's one of the best MCU films, and I wish more of them would really lean into being weird and wacky and funny like this one does. I guess you're noticing a pattern with my favorites. It's just the ones about misfits, finding family, and doing weird shit. Black Panther. Now, I just talked about this in my Wakanda Forever review. Just rewatched it the other day, and I like it, don't love it. It has a lot going for it, has great characters. I don't love it visually. I think it's structured a bit messily. Killmonger is a great villain, but I did want a little bit more from this one. And as important a film as it was, and I have so much respect for it, and I love Chadwick Boseman, it's going to be a C for me. I think it's in the middle of the pack sort of region for the MCU for me. Avengers Infinity War. It all built up to this. The Infinity Saga, almost. There were a couple more movies to go, but this was a huge film. It was a huge event when it came out. I saw this at least 5 times in theaters. In fact, I may have seen this more than just about any other MCU film besides Guardians of the Galaxy. Um, I love it. I think it is one of the MCU's darkest films. I won't say it breaks the formula because we have another film that sort of rectifies a lot of the darkness that occurs in this one, but I think it's bold. It left us with our heart in our throat for a year waiting for the next one to come out. It is probably my favorite representation of Doctor Strange in the MCU. I think he's wonderful in it, and it's definitely one of my favorites, Infinity War. And these Avengers movies just sort of kept getting better as they go along. Okay, besides Ultron, that was a bit of a dip, but that's going in the A tier for me. Love Avengers Infinity War. Now we come to Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now this one I probably like slightly more than the first Ant-Man. Again, just because we had more opportunities to go weird with it. Ghost was a good enough villain, not one of their best, but not one of their worst. In fact, now that I'm talking about it, I don't remember a whole lot from it, but it was great seeing Wasp get to be a central character in this film as opposed to being relegated to the side, and I think it's that sort of dynamic that just pushes this above the first one for me. So I am going to put Ant-Man and the Wasp in C tier alongside the first Ant-Man. It's a very fun movie. Now, Captain Marvel, the very much maligned Captain Marvel. Everybody hates Brie Larson because she said a couple feminist things. I really like Captain Marvel. I've only seen it the one time. I haven't gone back to rewatch it yet, but I had a wonderful time with it. There's every chance I go back and rewatch it and don't like it as much. But I thought Brie Larson is a great actress. She was a good casting choice. Samuel L. Jackson, it really gave us more Nick Fury than we're used to getting in these films. Ben Mendelsohn was great. Goose the cat, say what you will. I'm a sucker for cats. If you have a quality cat in a movie, I'm going to be paying attention. Overall, I really enjoyed it. Is it one of their best? No. But I think it is much better than most people give it credit for, and that is going to go in the C tier for me. Also, it's getting crowded in there. Now we come to Avengers Endgame, and if you'd watched my Best Movies of 2019 video, you would have seen it on the list, and you'd know that I love this film, and it is actually my favorite MCU film. I saw it in theaters many times. It made me cry almost every time. And yes, it's a film that benefits from having 20-odd films of backstory to support its narrative, but I think it was just done wonderfully, and it is proof that the Russo brothers can make a good film. They need a lot of help, but they can make a good film, because I truly, truly love Avengers Endgame, and I'm kind of bummed that people don't really talk about it so much anymore, because I really think it is the best that MCU has to offer. It excels in so many different areas, and it's, of course, going in the S tier for me. Now we come to Spider-Man Far From Home. I like this pretty much as I like Homecoming. It probably doesn't have that sense of fun and innocence that the first one has, but it's still exploring Peter navigating his youth. We bring in my favorite actor, Jake Gyllenhaal, as the villain. He's great. He's a great villain. He's almost kind of likable too as Mysterio. This is a wonderful film, and I honestly flip-flop between whether I like this or Homecoming more on any given day. It's a great holiday movie. It's visually really, really tricksy and creative, and ends with a big bombshell. So I'm going to put Far From Home in the A tier as well. I really bloody like these Spider-Man movies. Black Widow is a film that I enjoyed. I didn't feel an urge to rewatch it. I don't think it got everything right, and part of me feels like the story it told is a little bit redundant, and there are so many great solo adventures we could have told about Black Widow before her character died in the MCU. So it being a prequel was a little disappointing, but we got a lot of great stuff out of it. We got David Harbour and Rachel Weisz, both of whom I love them in the film, and it introduced Florence Pugh's character, whose name I cannot remember, but she's excellent in it, and it's one of those movies that really shines with the character dynamics. Some of the combat is very good too, but I don't find the villain to be particularly memorable, and the third act was just typical CGI shit flying everywhere, late period MCU stuff. So Gets a lot right, but it is probably on the lower end of the MCU, and I hate to say it, but I'm adding it to that goddamn C tier again. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's where the MCU. I like all of these movies. They're just not among like the better ones. Now we come to Shang-Chi, The Legend of the Ten Rings, which I was really excited for. I love Tony Leung. Very, very excited to see him playing the villain. But this movie was a bit of a letdown for me. I loved a lot about it. The first action scene on the bus is a really, really great piece of action filmmaking, and there's another cool one about halfway through the film. But as it went on, I just really lost touch with this movie, and I thought it was visually very bland. And the third act had so much potential for incredible visuals, and everything was just gray and muddy looking. I didn't find Shang-Chi to be an incredibly compelling character. I loved Aquafina in it. Tony Leung was excellent as well. But other than that, Shang-Chi didn't really make much of an impression on me at all, which is a bummer. And I'm really keen to see them continue the character and see what they can do with him. But it's definitely on the lower end of things for me, and I'm going to put it in D. Now, Eternals. Now, this was kind of a transitional sort of year for the MCU, but Eternals, I know people came out and didn't really like it. I loved Eternals. And it felt like a Chloe Zhao film through and through. It had her fingerprints all over it. It was naturalistic. A lot of it was done in camera. It didn't rely on CGI, despite being a very large-scale, fantastical movie. Loved the cast. Loved Ma Dong-seok. Loved Barry Keoghan. Angelina Jolie was great. Salma Hayek. Even Richard Madden. I know some people had issues with performance. I thought he was great. I loved Eternals. The runtime was great. It allowed the characters to breathe, and I didn't feel it at all. And it's one of the best of Phase 4. So I'm going to put Eternals in the B tier. Spider-Man No Way Home. This is one of the few examples where fan service just completely worked on me. Like, I knew I was being manipulated. I knew I was being shoved in. Hey, remember this in my face the whole time. I don't even care. This was a blast. It was wonderful seeing these characters of old come back. It was a great conclusion to this Peter Parker's arc, this era of him, I guess. It really completely flipped his world upside down at the end and set up infinite exciting possibilities for what's going to happen with him, and maybe for him to become this ground level friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that we haven't really seen from him yet in this series. So Spider-Man No Way Home, I'm a big fan of it, despite, the cheap shots it's taking. I'm going to put it in the A tier. One of the best theater experiences I've ever had. I shed a tear when Andrew Garfield walked through that door, my friends. I'm not even a big fan of those movies, but I shed a tear when Andrew Garfield walked through that goddamn door. Now we come to this year. I've talked about these in reviews, so I won't spend too long on them, but Doctor Strange The Multiverse of Madness, very wacky, fun, Sam Raimi-esque sort of film. I think I liked it about the same as the first one. I think it could have gotten a lot more out of the concept than it did, but what it did get out of it was still quite good and fun, and even occasionally scary. So that is going to go in the C tier. Thor Love and Thunder. This was definitely a film that I had a lot of fun with initially, and then I thought about it for a day and thought this was actually not a very good movie. It was structurally very messy, didn't feel overly true to the characters. The villain was quite good. I really liked Christian Bale, but I don't know, just there wasn't much to this one. And I think I'm actually going to put this in the E tier. I think it's a bad film. And I think Taika Waititi could have done a lot better. And it's also visually quite bad, which I've been having a problem with a lot of the recent MCU films. So yeah, Thor Love and Thunder was a huge disappointment because I was really excited for it. And finally, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Just reviewed it. Check out that review if you haven't. I loved this a lot more than I was expecting to. It's a great film. I'm going to put it in the B tier comfortably. I like it more than the first one. It's a wonderful tribute to Chadwick Boseman that still crafts its own story. Now, let me rank all of these in their individual tiers. Just looking at this, I am going to drop Age of Ultron down to the D tier for a bit of symmetry, but I think everything else deserves to be in that C tier for me. Now in the S, my favorite MCU film is Avengers Endgame, Guardians of the Galaxy a comfortable second, and then Thor Ragnarok a comfortable third. A tier, this is a tough one to rank. I think it's gonna be the Winter Soldier, and then Infinity War, and then Iron Man. Those six are probably easily the most sort of special ones to me. Now, how do I rank the Spider-Man ones? I've got them all in the same spot. I think No Way Home is my favorite just because of what a wonderful experience it was. These two could change on a dime, but I'm going to keep it in that order. Homecoming and then Far From Home. B tier, top of the B tier for me, it's probably going to be Civil War. I really, really like that film. Then it's going to be Guardians of the Galaxy and then The Winter Soldier. Those three are films that I'm like, well, I acknowledge they're flawed. They're some of the best times I've had in the MCU. Now, then it's going to be Eternals, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and Avengers in that lower B tier. I'm sorry, don't get mad at me, please. C tier. How do I even rank this? My favorite here is probably Captain Marvel, if I'm being honest. I really like that film. It's very fun. Ant-Man, not far behind. One of my favorite 7 out of 10 movies ever, if that makes sense. Behind that is going to Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man and the Wasp can go above Ant-Man and go there. Then it's going to be Black Panther, then Doctor Strange, then Doctor Strange 2, and then Black Widow at the bottom of that C tier. D tier, top of this will be obviously Age of Ultron because I only just moved it down. Thor, Shang-Chi, Iron Man 2 at the bottom because I barely remember it. And in that E tier, Thor, Dark World can stay at the top. Hulk's probably my least favorite. I'm so ambivalent toward that movie, and Love and Thunder there, which was what a disappointment that film was. But that is it. That is me done with this tier list. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry I didn't rank TV, but this video is long enough as it is, and also I haven't seen them. But let me know. Please feel free to tear my head off in the comments for having the Avengers too low, but this is my take on the MCU, and I think there are very few bad movies. Even those D tier movies still have elements that I like about them. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching this video. Stay tuned. I will be getting out another monthly Oscar predictions video as soon as I am able to. Those things take a while to make, but I've seen a lot more stuff since the last one, so it's going to be a fun one to make. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Letterboxd, and subscribe to the channel for plenty more movie content. Have a good day.